Today in the United States, nearly 2/3 of the population is overweight. Almost 1 in 3 Americans is obese. And no one wants to be. Americans want to be thinner, and yet old and young Americans are getting fatter and fatter and fatter. We all think it's our own fault. It is not that simple. The food industry is also at fault.
We're besieged. Wherever we go, we're encouraged to eat junk food.
And the government is at fault.
We have government policies that promote overeating from the beginning to the end of the food chain.
Tonight, we will tell you how the government and the food industry have helped to make America fat. Now, we know that blaming the government because so many people are overweight, way overweight in many cases, will be rejected by those who say that personal health and well-being are a matter of personal responsibility. We were inclined to that point of view. But this project has proved to us that the processed food industry and the government know full well what is happening, and they are making a bad situation worse. We went first to the farmlands of America where the food chain begins. During the harvest season here, fertile soil and hard work pay off with an agricultural abundance that feeds the nation and the world. And here in Millersport, Ohio, people celebrate the harvest in a traditional way. The Millersport Sweet Corn Festival attracts 50,000 people to the music, the pageants, and of course, the corn. This is a celebration of American agriculture.
We as Americans spend less of our disposable income on food than anybody else on the face of this globe. And it's because our farmers are very efficient. They've worked with their government to be able to not only be efficient and effective in what they do, but also produce an incredible product.
It's the first time in mankind's history that you haven't have to worry about food. We're the envy of the world in our agricultural system.
But the story of American agriculture is also one of unintended consequences. Today, American farmers produce for domestic consumption vastly more food than America needs, nearly twice as much. And the more food we grow, the more we eat. Abundance has become the enemy.
When I first started studying nutrition, it never occurred to me that I didn't need to know anything at all about agriculture. Now I see it as the basis of everything having to do with nutrition. If you want to understand why people eat the way they do, you need to understand the way agriculture works in this country.
To begin with, agriculture works in America through farm subsidies. During the Depression in the 1930s, government began subsidizing farmers to save them from financial ruin. The money never stopped. This year, government will put roughly $20 billion into agriculture, most of it directly to the farmers. And not many people in the government have made the connection between subsidies to agriculture and obesity, but there is one, and it's very important. Does the government take dietary guidelines and nutritional concerns into consideration when it's making those grants?
There's no concern whatsoever. There's no link between agricultural subsidies and health. In fact, we've been trying to find analyses of what is the health impact of the farm subsidies. We can't find a single study. Congress, the administration, is handing out these subsidies without knowing what is the ultimate impact on their constituents, the American public.
The Bush administration's man in charge of public health is Health and Human Services Secretary Tommy Thompson. Do you see any connection between the federal government's agricultural subsidy programs and nutrition?
I really don't. Because the subsidy programs are things that are done through Congress, much more so than trying to come up with an overall strategy as far as nutrition is concerned.
Well, do you see a connection between the money which government gives to agriculture and nutrition? Do you see a connection?
There's no question that if you have money out there and subsidize in particular things, that product is going to be grown more. And some of those products are not good for nutrition. If that's what you're asking me, yes.
This is the food pyramid, the government's guide to good nutrition, what we should be eating. Less of what is on top, sugars, fats, and then meats and dairy, and more of what's on the bottom, grains and fresh fruits and vegetables. Of the total amount of money that supports American agriculture, how much of that money goes towards fruits and vegetables, both production and promotion?
You'd have to look at the percentage as less than 1%.
Really?
Minimal products.
We wanted to see what the food pyramid would look like if it reflected where the government farm subsidies actually end up. Look at this. Since 1995, meat and dairy got about 3 times the subsidies of grains. According to data from the Department of Agriculture and the Environmental Working Group, sugars, fats, the foods government says we should eat least got about 20 times more subsidies than fruits and vegetables.
There's a disconnect between agricultural policy and health policy. That's probably the biggest problem that the federal government faces. We don't look at how agricultural policy can help improve public health. It's strictly about subsidies.
And does government know this?
Government knows it. I'm not sure government at the moment knows what to do about it. How do you undo government policy that has not been focused on health and nutrition, but has been focused on subsidizing farmers?
The most heavily subsidized crop in America is corn. Farmers plant nearly 80 million acres of corn, and in the last 5 years, they got an average of $5.5 billion in federal subsidies every year.
On your mark. Get set, eat!
When most of us think of corn, we do tend to think of the sweet corn they're eating here at the Millersport Festival.
It don't get any better than this, folks. Lost a tooth. Oh, no. You all right? Lost a tooth. Unbelievable. Tooth fairy tonight.
But there is another way to think of corn, not as corn on the cob, but as cheap raw material for the giant food industry.
The vast majority of corn is feed corn. It's fed to chickens, hogs, and especially cattle. That corn helps these animals grow faster, fatter, and holds down the costs of meat. That encourages Americans to eat more meat.
Of course, beef cattle were never intended to eat corn, and so they have to be given all sorts of antibiotics to keep them healthy. Subsidized corn is everywhere. The whole food system has been, as someone said, cornified. Corn is processed and put into thousands of products that Americans use every day.
There you go. Enjoy the show.
If you want to see more directly how farm subsidies can lead to obesity, there is no better place than your local theater. The popcorn you eat here is made with subsidized corn.
One large popcorn? Sure, no problem.
The popcorn is so inexpensive that the bag it comes in costs more than the popcorn. That's why you can buy the mega size for just a few pennies more. The oil they cook it in is subsidized too. And so is the oil they put on top. That is not usually butter, but subsidized vegetable oil. And there's corn in the soda, a corn-derived sweetener called high fructose corn syrup. Since the 1970s, its use has gone up more than 4,000%. Subsidized corn sweeteners, which have pretty much taken over from sugar, are in candy and pretzels and some hot dogs too.
Is there something else I can get you tonight, like a hot dog or a nice warm pretzel?
Here's something else to know about obesity. Americans consume nearly 3 times more corn in the form of corn sweeteners than they do in every other form.